You didn't find this video. It found you. And if you're still here reading these words or listening to this voice, it's because a deeper part of your being is ready, not just to learn something new, but to remember something ancient. Because this isn't just any video. It's not just another idea to add to your mind. This is a transmission, a key disguised as language, a seed that only opens when the soul is ready to receive it. In Hermeticism, there are no accidents. There are signs. There are echoes. There are sacred timings. And if this law, the one you're about to hear, has crossed your path today, it's because something within you is asking for balance, for clarity, for peace that doesn't vanish with circumstance, for a center that cannot be shaken by life's extremes. You may have lived years trying to avoid certain emotions, trying to hold on to the positive and reject the negative, running from fear, chasing happiness, getting caught in the high then crashing into the low, trying to build a life where only one side of the story is allowed to exist. But somewhere inside, you've always known, there must be more than this. There must be a way to live without being pulled in every direction. There must be a truth. That explains why light and darkness, love and hate, clarity and confusion all seem to take turns inside us. And that truth has a name. The principle of polarity, one of the 7 Hermetic laws, encoded into the Kybalion, whispered across ages, from initiate to initiate. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature but different in degree. The Kybalion, at first glance, it might sound abstract, philosophical, poetic. But to those who are ready, it becomes a portal. A doorway into a completely different way of seeing the world and yourself. This law isn't just about what's out there in the universe. It governs what happens inside you. Your moods, your reactions, your desires, your pain. And once you understand it, truly understand it, something begins to shift. You stop seeing your emotions as random. You stop labeling your experiences as good or bad. You stop fighting the swing, and instead you begin to observe it, learn from it, move with it. Because the truth is this: most people live at the mercy of polarity. They are tossed between extremes like a leaf in the wind. One compliment and they soar. One criticism and they crash. They cling to joy, and then despair when it fades. They chase love and collapse when it slips away. They are ruled by the pendulum, because no one ever taught them that they could step out of it. The Hermetic masters did not escape duality. They transcended it. They didn't pretend pain didn't exist. They didn't suppress fear or shame or anger. They observed these forces like a sculptor examines stone, and through understanding, they transformed them. That's what this video is about. Not how to escape the darkness, but how to integrate it. Not how to live only in the light, but how to walk with balance between the two. Not how to silence your shadow, but how to listen to it until it becomes part of your wholeness. This is not the path of denial. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is the path of the initiate, of the one who looks into the chaos, the doubt, the pain, and says, I will not run, I will remember. Because here's the hidden truth. The opposites in your life are not trying to destroy you. They are trying to show you who you really are. And if you're hearing this now, it means the time has come to stop swinging and start centering. To step beyond labeling life as good or bad and begin seeing it as a dance of sacred forces. You're not here to escape polarity. You're here to understand it, to master it, to embody the still point at the center of all movement. And that journey starts now. Step into any moment of life and you'll find it. Contrast, a tension, a pull between two forces, an invisible rope stretching reality in opposite directions. From the very beginning, existence introduces itself to us through the language of two, light and darkness, warmth and cold, joy and sorrow, life and death. We grow up surrounded by this dance, believing, without question, that these forces are separate, that they oppose one another. That one must win. But Hermetic wisdom invites a different kind of seeing, a deeper kind of listening, not with the eyes or even with the intellect, but with that silent part of you that already knows. There are no true opposites, only polarities. And what is a polarity if not two ends of the same thread? We call something opposite when we cannot yet see the continuum that binds it. We say that hate is the opposite of love because we've forgotten that both are born from the same root: attachment, desire, vulnerability. We believe fear is the enemy of courage, forgetting that courage cannot exist without fear. We imagine life and death as separate realms, blind to the fact that they are simply doorways in the same sacred spiral. This is what the Kybalion meant when it whispered one of its most paradoxical teachings. Everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same, opposites are identical in nature but different in degree. The Kybalion, the Hermetic principle of polarity, reveals something few ever dare to contemplate: that everything we experience as opposing is actually the same thing, vibrating at different levels. Let that sink in. What you call hot and cold is simply temperature, energy, and variation. Where does cold become warm? Where does warm become hot? There's no fixed boundary, only degrees. And what applies to heat applies to consciousness, to emotion, to perception, to the soul itself. Try to define light without darkness, you can't. Try to define peace without chaos, it becomes hollow. Try to imagine love without the threat of its absence, and you begin to see that even our most cherished emotions only exist because of contrast. Polarity is not an obstacle. It's the very structure through which experience becomes possible. The Hermetic sages were not interested in rejecting one pole in favor of another. They sought to understand the relationship between them. Because once you recognize that opposites are only relative, you begin to shift your relationship with reality. You stop asking, "How do I stay in the light forever?" And you begin asking, "How do I move through shadow with awareness?" You stop dividing your inner world into acceptable and unacceptable, and instead, you start to see everything you experience has a counterpart, and the secret is to find it. Because most people live trapped in the extreme ends of polarity. They cling to the high and fear the fall. They chase one emotion while suppressing another. They live on the surface of the pendulum, celebrating when it swings their way and suffering when it doesn't. But there's another way. Hermeticism teaches that the pendulum swing is universal law. It governs all things. Your moods, your energy, your relationships, your sense of self. Everything moves between poles. The tides rise and fall. The moon waxes and wanes. So does your mind. So does your heart. But here's the great secret. You don't have to live at the mercy of the swing. You can learn to stand in the center, not in apathy, not in numbness, but in awareness, the still point at the heart of the movement. This is what the Kybalion calls the law of neutralization. The art of rising above the swing, not by resisting it but by understanding it, by observing it without becoming it. It is not suppression, it is not denial, it is mastery, the ability to choose your vibration rather than being thrown between extremes. Imagine waking up and no longer being yanked around by emotions you don't understand. Imagine hearing criticism without collapsing into shame. Imagine experiencing failure without spiraling into despair. Not because you've numbed yourself, but because you've located the axis within. That's what the Hermetic masters achieved. Not a life without contrast, but a state of being that could remain steady within the contrast. To the untrained mind, life looks chaotic, random, opposing. But to the one who sees with Hermetic sight, it becomes a living dance of polarity, a sacred rhythm between poles, each one teaching, shaping, refining. And this is where we begin to shift inward. Because polarity is not just out there in the world. It is happening inside you, right now. Your thoughts, your reactions, your desires, your inner conflicts, they are all vibrational expressions of polar forces trying to find balance. And unless you learn to navigate them, they will rule you. You'll keep chasing highs and crashing into lows. You'll keep trying to destroy one part of yourself to preserve another. You'll keep seeking light while running from your own shadow. But there's another path. A deeper path. A path where opposites are no longer threats, but teachers. That path begins with a question. What if you stopped fighting the pendulum and started listening to it? What if you could learn to use your lowest states to guide you toward your highest? What if every fear was the doorway to courage? What if every sadness was hiding the seed of joy? What if every extreme was secretly a compass pointing you home? In the next part of this journey, we will begin that descent into your emotional body, into your inner world, to see how the principle of polarity plays out in your everyday experience, and how, through understanding it, you can begin to transform suffering into strength. Because the goal is not to escape the opposites, it's to find the place within you where the two become one. Now that you've seen the architecture of polarity in the outer world, the opposites that govern nature, matter, and experience, we must turn our gaze inward, because the most profound expressions of polarity don't just shape the cosmos. They shape you. You are not outside this law. You are this law, embodied, and nowhere is that more evident than in your emotional life. Have you ever noticed how quickly your inner state can shift? How easily joy becomes sadness? How confidence morphs into insecurity? How one thought, one interaction, one memory can flip your entire internal world from light to shadow. One moment you feel clear, empowered, grounded. The next, you're questioning everything. You doubt your path, your purpose, your worth. It feels chaotic, like you're failing, like you're broken, but you're not broken. You're simply riding the pendulum. The same one we explored before, only now, it's swinging through the corridors of your own heart and mind. This is the inner polarity, and for most people it rules them unconsciously. They are possessed by moods, unaware of their source. They feel pushed and pulled by emotions that seem beyond control. They try to cling to the good feelings and banish the bad, hoping to build a life of permanent positivity, only to fall even harder when the shadow returns. But here's what Hermetic wisdom reveals. Emotions are not problems. They are polar energies, and they are meant to be transmuted, not suppressed. This is the ancient art of emotional alchemy, one of the highest applications of the principle of polarity. The alchemist doesn't destroy lead. They transform it into gold. And in the same way, you are not here to destroy your fear, sadness, or rage. You are here to understand them and raise their vibration. Let's take an example. Anger. Most people view anger as something negative, shameful, destructive. But anger is simply energy. It is passion misaligned. At its root, it is often a reaction to perceived injustice, powerlessness, or pain. If repressed, it festers. If expressed unconsciously, it burns everything in its path. But if observed, if honored, if channeled with awareness, and that same energy becomes courage, it becomes fierce love. It becomes boundaried clarity, because anger and compassion are not enemies. They are two poles of the same force. The same is true for fear. Fear, when judged and rejected, creates paralysis. But fear observed without judgment becomes alertness, awareness, intuition sharpened by necessity. It's not the emotion that limits you, it's your relationship to it. You were never taught this growing up. No one explained that your emotions were vibrational messengers, that each one carried a counterpart, that every pain you feel holds the seed of its opposite within it. Let's go deeper. Have you ever felt grief so deep that it made you numb to the world? A loss, a rupture, a disappointment so profound it shut you down? Now think back. What happened? When you stopped running from it? When you allowed yourself to feel it fully? Often something unexpected emerges. Gratitude. Not for the pain itself, but for the depth it carved inside you, for the way it softened you, for the truth it forced you to face, for the clarity it left behind. That's emotional transmutation. That's the principle of polarity in action. You took one end of the spectrum, and through awareness moved to the other, not by force, not by pretending, but by being present with the movement. This is how Hermetic initiates approach the inner world, not as something to be controlled through discipline, but as something to be observed, understood, and refined. They know that every emotional state is a gateway, and that gateway leads somewhere deeper if you have the patience to walk through it. This doesn't mean becoming passive. It doesn't mean sitting with suffering endlessly. It means stepping out of reaction and into response. Noticing the swing, but not being consumed by it. Becoming a participant in your inner weather, not its victim. This also means looking at others differently. When someone lashes out at you, can you see that behind their attack is often a wound? That what looks like arrogance might be insecurity? That what feels like rejection might be unspoken fear? This is not to justify harm, but to see the hidden polarity in every expression. And once you see that in others, you begin to see it in yourself. You realize that your own patterns, your own shadows, your own defenses are not signs that you're failing. They are invitations to move toward wholeness. Because here's something deeper. Your identity, the self you present to the world, is also built on polar division. You have a light self, the parts of you that are praised, approved, accepted. The talents you show, the kindness you express, the version of you that fits the mold. And then you have a shadow self, the parts you repress, the needs you hide, the impulses you shame, the feelings you were told not to feel. Most people spend their lives trying to strengthen the light side and eliminate the shadow. But the Hermetic path invites something different. Integration, to look at the shadow and say, "You are also me, and I am here to reclaim you." This is the essence of emotional alchemy, because your greatest gifts are often hidden behind your greatest fears. Your deepest wisdom is buried beneath your most uncomfortable emotions. Your wholeness will only be found when you stop trying to be one-sided and start becoming a conscious bridge between the poles. In doing so, you discover something extraordinary. There was never light without darkness. There was never a positive without the so-called negative. There was only one energy, flowing in two directions, waiting for you to become the point of balance. That's what emotional mastery is. Not becoming unfeeling, not becoming positive all the time, but becoming a being of awareness, one who can sit in sadness without drowning, who can feel anger without being consumed, who can meet fear and still choose love. You are the alchemist, and your raw material is everything you were taught to hide. In the next part of our journey, we'll go even deeper, into the very fabric of identity, the mystery of shadow, and the silent union of extremes that lives at the core of your being. Because polarity is not just emotional, it is existential. And until you reclaim all that you are, you will remain divided against yourself. But once you do, everything begins to return to center. In the great tapestry of Hermetic wisdom, one of the most confronting truths is this: you are not who you think you are, not entirely. You are not just the sum of your talents, your personality, or the identity you've carefully curated over the years. You are also the hidden, the repressed, the shadow, and the Hermetic principle of polarity is the key that allows you to not only confront these hidden layers, but to integrate them. Let us begin where discomfort lives. There are parts of you that you've tried to leave behind. Perhaps you've silenced your rage, denied your jealousy, buried your fear, your shame, your need for control. You labeled these traits as unworthy, inappropriate, or even evil, and so you cast them into the cellar of your psyche. But they didn't disappear. They became your shadow. Swiss psychologist Carl Jung called the shadow the unknown dark side of the personality. But he also understood something deeper, that the shadow isn't your enemy. It is the denied half of the whole. It is the opposite pole of the identity you show to the world. And here is where the principle of polarity enters the spiritual laboratory of the self. Every trait you express has a hidden counterpart. Confidence is born beside insecurity. Strength emerges from a relationship with weakness. Altruism may carry a hidden desire for recognition, and the more we cling to only one side of the pole, only light, only kindness, only purity, the more the opposite pole gathers power in the unconscious. This is the law of balance, of polarity, and the one who walks the Hermetic path must eventually descend into the underworld of the self, not to destroy the shadow but to retrieve it. You see, the ego loves simplicity. It wants a fixed identity, a mask, a consistent character. It says, I am kind, I am good, I am spiritual. But real spiritual growth begins when you admit that you are also cruel, also selfish, also human. The Hermetic initiate does not run from contradiction. They embrace it, because they understand that wholeness is not about becoming purely light. It is about becoming fully integrated. Here lies the art of shadow work, not as a psychological chore, but as a sacred initiation. You begin by asking the questions most avoid. What do I judge most in others? What triggers me beyond logic? What emotions do I avoid at all costs? What part of me do I fear being seen? And then you sit with those parts, not to analyze them to death, but to witness them. Because when the light of presence touches the shadow, transmutation begins. This is alchemy of the soul. The anger you suppress may hold your power. The fear you run from might contain your deepest intuition. The shame you carry could be the gatekeeper of your authenticity. The very parts you've disowned may be the keys to your sovereignty. Why? Because everything repressed grows in polarity. The more you suppress a part of yourself, the more it builds pressure in the unconscious. And eventually it returns. Through projection, through illness, through crisis. Not to punish you, but to be reintegrated. To be made whole again. Now ask yourself this. What if the self you are trying so hard to maintain is the very prison keeping you from evolution? This is why many spiritual traditions speak of ego death. But ego death is not self-destruction, it is self-expansion. It is the moment when the narrow identity of the mask collapses, and the deeper self, the one who can hold all polarities, emerges. This deeper self is not afraid of shadow. It knows the dance of night and day. It speaks the language of paradox. It does not need to choose between strength or softness, clarity or mystery, fire or water. It is both, and it becomes sovereign when it can hold both with reverence. Let us take a moment to visualize this. Imagine your psyche as a temple. In its central chamber stands your conscious identity, clean, bright, curated. But behind it, in a series of veiled rooms, lives the rest of you, the parts that were not allowed to speak. The forgotten child, the angry warrior, the grieving lover, the seductress, the fool, the mystic, all locked away in silence. Shadow work is the process of walking through those corridors one by one and saying to each part, I see you, I hear you, you belong. And when you do this, something miraculous happens. The temple doesn't collapse, it becomes illuminated. Each repressed part brings new vitality, new color, new power to the whole. This is inner sovereignty, not perfection, not moral superiority, but the ability to contain contradiction without fragmentation. In the Kybalion, this is the essence of the law of neutralization. It teaches that the initiate can rise above the swing of the pendulum by entering the center, where all opposites converge. And that center is not found by clinging to light or rejecting shadow, but by embracing the totality of being. You are not only your thoughts, you are not only your behavior, you are not only your dreams, you are also your wounds, your impulses, your fears, your fantasies. And when you bring all of this into awareness, not to indulge it but to integrate it, you stop being fragmented, you become whole. This is what Jung called individuation, and what the mystics called union. A sacred marriage of the conscious and unconscious, the known and the hidden. And it begins with radical honesty. Are you willing to see all of yourself? Are you ready to step into the sacred tension of polarity? Not to resolve it, but to embody it? Because only then does the real magic begin. Only then do you become not a character, but a consciousness, not a mask, but a mystery. And that is when sovereignty is no longer a concept. It becomes your way of being. The Hermetic path is not for those who seek only light. It is for those who seek truth. And the truth is this: you are shadow and light. You are fear and courage. You are divine because you are whole. So walk into your own underworld, not with shame, but with reverence. There is gold there, waiting to be remembered and reclaimed. The one became two, so that it might know itself through reflection. There is a hidden symmetry behind everything you see: the stars and the atoms, the spiral of galaxies and the spiral of your DNA, the inhale and the exhale, the rise and fall of civilizations, the ebb and flow of your own moods. All of them are woven by a silent law, ancient and unchanging, the law of polarity. But to see this law, you must shift your eyes from the personal to the universal, from the self to the cosmos, because polarity is not only a psychological truth, it is the sacred scaffolding of existence itself. Let us begin at the beginning. In the Hermetic view, the universe is not random. It is not a meaningless accident of chaos. It is the unfolding of a primordial intelligence, what the ancients called the All. From this one source, all things emerge. But the one, in its unity, cannot experience contrast. It is total, absolute, beyond form, so it divides itself. Not to create conflict, but to create experience. This is the sacred birth of polarity, the moment spirit mirrors itself through contrast. The masculine and the feminine, the seen and the unseen, the visible and the invisible. Every polarity is an echo of this original divide, so that the one may witness itself from different angles. This is not a fall from grace. It is the mechanism of creation. Just as white light becomes visible through the prism, the divine becomes known through the dance of opposites. From here we begin to understand that polarity is not a flaw in the universe. It is its architecture, its operating system. Without it, there is no definition, no distinction, no possibility of becoming. Try for a moment to imagine a universe with only light, no shadow, only sound, no silence, only activity, no stillness. You can't, because each defines the other. The universe itself is a mirror made of opposites. The planets orbit because of the tension between inertia and gravity. Life arises from the balance of chaos and order. The seed cracks open in darkness before it reaches for light. And this isn't just poetic. It is encoded in the very laws of nature. In Taoism, we see it in the yin and yang, the dark and the light, swirling together in sacred balance. In alchemy, the opposites are sulfur and mercury, masculine and feminine, fixed and volatile, seeking union through the philosopher's stone. In the Vedic traditions, the world is born from the interplay of Purusha and Prakriti, consciousness and nature. Across all traditions, the truth repeats: polarity is the engine of becoming. Now turn your attention inward. Just as the cosmos is shaped by polarity, so too is your consciousness. You contain the same forces, the same architecture. Your mind swings between reason and intuition. Your body holds both softness and strength. Your soul yearns for both transcendence and embodiment. You are not separate from the universe. You are its reflection in miniature. A walking polarity, a mirror of the macrocosm. This is what the Hermetic axiom "as above, so below" truly means. It is not a metaphor, it is a formula. And when you see polarity operating on every level, from the celestial to the cellular, you begin to realize something extraordinary. Every challenge in your life is a polarity at play. Every time you feel torn, it is because two forces within you are calling for balance. Not domination, not suppression, but recognition, harmony. Even spiritual awakening itself is a movement between poles, from ignorance to knowledge, from darkness to light, from fragmentation to wholeness. And yet, here lies the great paradox. The more you seek to eliminate one side of the polarity, the more power it gains. If you try to destroy darkness, it will chase you in shadow. If you try to live only in light, you will become blind to what lies behind you. If you suppress anger, it will return as illness. If you deny your body, your spirit will feel ungrounded. Polarity cannot be erased. It can only be transcended through inclusion. The true initiate does not choose one side over the other. They learn to stand between them, to hold both poles in their awareness without collapsing into either. This is the sacred equilibrium, the axis between all opposites, and from this axis, creation becomes possible. Let us return now to the cosmos and gaze upon it with new eyes. Why does the sun rise only after night? Why does the breath pause between inhale and exhale? Why does birth require both tension and surrender? Because polarity creates rhythm, and rhythm is the heartbeat of the universe. You are not meant to escape this rhythm, but to learn its music. To recognize that when one pole dominates your life, it is not a punishment, but a call to integration. If you find yourself surrounded by conflict, perhaps the pole of peace has been neglected. If you feel frozen in logic, perhaps the pole of mystery longs to be heard. If you are drowning in chaos, perhaps your soul is seeking structure, not to imprison you, but to give your potential a home. This awareness changes everything, because now, when you face opposition, you don't see it as an enemy. You see it as a teacher, a signpost, a magnetic signal pointing to what you've forgotten. You begin to live as a conscious architect, not a victim of your circumstances. This is the Hermetic path, not one of blind belief, but of direct perception, to see the law of polarity in your life, in your body, in your choices, and to honor it as sacred. Let us close this part with a simple truth, encoded in every mystical tradition. Behind every polarity, there is a hidden unity. The masculine and the feminine were once one. The light and the dark arise from the same source. The yes and the no are born from the same silence. And you? You are not meant to choose one side. You are meant to awaken the center. To change your life, change your vibration. To change your vibration, change the thought behind it. There is a current that runs through the invisible structure of the universe. A silent pulse, a frequency, a sacred hum beneath all things. The Hermetic sages named this force vibration, and they knew what modern science is only beginning to rediscover, that all is energy in motion. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. But vibration is not chaotic. It is governed by law. And here lies a powerful truth. Every vibration exists on a spectrum, and every spectrum is polar in nature. This is where the law of polarity merges with the principle of vibration. They are not separate laws, but reflections of the same, underlying mechanics of creation. One describes the dual nature of things. The other describes the dynamic that moves between them. Together, they reveal the secret. Reality is not fixed. It is tuned, like the strings of a divine instrument. Your thoughts, your emotions, your intentions all emit frequencies, and the frequency you sustain determines the version of reality you inhabit. But let's go deeper. Most people believe their thoughts are reactions to the world, that they think because of what happens around them. But the Hermetic initiate sees the inverse. The world is responding to your dominant vibration, the subtle, often unconscious pulse beneath your words, your beliefs, your attention. You are not just thinking, you are broadcasting, and the universe in turn is responding, not to your wishes or your hopes, but to your vibrational signature. This is not metaphysics as fantasy. This is Hermetic science. As Hermes taught, the mind, as well as metals and elements, may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree. Your inner state is malleable, and that means your outer world is too. Let us consider thought. A thought is not just a concept. It is an energetic impulse, a subtle vibration, and every thought exists on a polarity: hope and despair, trust and doubt, self-worth and shame. These are not different realities, but different frequencies along the same spectrum. To shift from one to the other, you do not need to eliminate the lower. You must transmute it to the higher. Here again, the law of polarity reveals its alchemical power. Let's say you're overcome with anxiety. The common impulse is to resist it, to push it away. But polarity teaches that anxiety is not a separate force. It is a lower vibration of alertness. What is needed is not suppression, but elevation. You raise the frequency. You increase awareness. You tune into a higher octave of the same energetic stream. This is what the ancients called mental transmutation. You take the base metal of your experience, your fear, your grief, your limitation, and through conscious attention, you refine it. You don't deny your shadow. You illuminate it. You don't escape your emotion. You listen to its message. And through that listening, the vibration shifts. This is not metaphorical. It is mechanical, lawful, hermetic. Let's explore this further. Every thought form you carry is a pattern, and every pattern attracts its polar reflection in the world. If you habitually carry resentment, you will find events and people that confirm betrayal. Not because you deserve it, but because you're tuned to that frequency. The signal goes out, the world echoes back. But change the vibration, release the pattern, and the echo must change. This is the true power of free will, not to manipulate the outer world, but to govern the vibrational compass within. Now consider how this applies to every area of your life. In relationships, the polarity between love and fear often dictates the flow. Do you contract when threatened, or open? Do you choose the higher pole of vulnerability, or collapse into defense? In health, every symptom carries a vibrational cause. Disease is not just physical, it is a signal of imbalance. What thought, what emotion, what belief are you harboring that vibrates out of sync with your natural state? In abundance, lack is not the absence of resources, it is the presence of a low-frequency mindset. Gratitude, generosity, trust, these raise the dial, and when the inner tone shifts, the external supply can flow in. You begin to see that life is not something that happens to you. It is something that happens through you, and this is not about toxic positivity or magical thinking. It is about vibrational responsibility. To own your frequency is to reclaim your creative power, not because you control outcomes, but because you control alignment. And alignment changes everything. Let us now turn to an even deeper layer. At the root of all thoughts is a deeper polarity, the polarity between ego and essence. Ego is the voice of separation. It vibrates at the frequency of survival, comparison, fear, identity. It says, I am this and not that. It divides, it protects, it seeks control, but it also limits. Essence, on the other hand, is the voice of unity. It vibrates at the frequency of presence, trust, love, stillness. It whispers, I am part of the whole. It expands, it softens, it opens. Both are part of you. Neither is evil. But most are unconsciously ruled by the ego pole, unaware that another vibration is available, right now. The Hermetic path is not about eradicating the ego. It is about raising it into alignment with essence, tuning it, refining it, letting the lower yield to the higher, not by force but by frequency. This is why practices like meditation, breathwork, mantra, sacred silence, ritual, all exist, to tune the instrument, to stabilize the vibration, to move from reactivity to resonance. When you sit in silence, you are not wasting time. You are recalibrating your signal. When you chant a sacred sound, you are not performing an empty rite. You are harmonizing with cosmic tone. And when you think a new thought, not just mentally but emotionally, vibrationally, you are planting a new blueprint in the field of potential. This is the essence of Hermetic manifestation. You don't beg the universe. You don't force outcomes. You attune to the reality you wish to live, and it must, by law, begin to assemble around you. Not instantly. Not always in the way you expect. But inevitably. Because vibration is law. And the one who masters polarity learns to master which frequency they choose to embody. Let us close with this. You are a tuning fork in the mind of God. Every moment you are vibrating, and every vibration is a choice, a signal, a seed. So choose your pole. Choose the higher octave, not by pretending to be light, but by raising the shadow into light, not by fighting darkness, but by vibrating brighter. Because the secret is not to escape the swing of the pendulum, it is to rise above it, and once you do, you no longer live as a victim of frequency, you live as its conductor. Duality is the veil, not the truth. Beyond the two, there is only the one. There is a secret that lies hidden at the core of the Hermetic teachings, a secret so simple that the mind overlooks it, yet so profound that it shatters the illusion of separation when realized. It is this: all duality is an appearance, an echo of a deeper unity. We live in a world of opposites, masculine and feminine, light and dark, good and evil, movement and stillness, form and emptiness. The polarity of existence defines our experience. But what if the poles are not final truths but thresholds? What if they are doors meant to be passed through, not camps to be trapped in? The Hermetic sages taught that the universe is not made of dualities. It is made of unities that appear as opposites. This is not poetry. It is perception. Think of a coin. Heads and tails seem to oppose each other, but they are not separate. They are aspects of one thing, and no matter how fiercely they contrast, they belong to the same source. So it is with all polarities. Everything you experience, light and dark, self and other, joy and sorrow, is the universe playing with its own reflection, learning to know itself through contrast. And when you believe the contrast is the reality, you suffer. But when you see the one behind the two, you awaken. This awakening is not conceptual. It is experiential. And it begins with a shift, from identification with form to awareness of essence. The swing of the pendulum continues. Life rises and falls, but something in you no longer clings to one side. You become the observer, the witness, the still point between the poles, and in that stillness something ancient returns. The memory of unity. It is not a thought. It is a recognition, a remembrance that you are not a fragment. You are a wave returning to the ocean. You are not the left or right swing of the pendulum. You are the axis itself. This is what the mystics called the middle way. Buddha taught it not as compromise, but as liberation. The Taoists called it the path of harmony. Christ spoke of the peace that surpasses understanding. And Hermes, in his cryptic codes, pointed to the silent space where as above and so below are reconciled as one. But how do we get there? How does a mind conditioned by polarity remember the truth of unity? The first step is to stop fighting the opposites. Most suffering is not caused by duality itself, but by our resistance to it. We crave one side and reject the other. We want success, not failure, light, not shadow, pleasure, not pain. But polarity always includes both. To cling to only one side is to break yourself in half. And this is why wholeness is not found in perfection, but in integration. You do not need to eliminate fear to know peace. You need to embrace it. You do not need to banish shadow to walk in light. You need to include it, because inclusion is the movement of unity. Rejection is the echo of separation. The great spiritual teachers were not perfect beings untouched by polarity. They were masters of reconciliation. They walked through duality, but lived from unity. They wept, but were not broken. They burned, but were not consumed. They saw all opposites as parts of the divine choreography. And this is your invitation, to stop resisting what arises, to meet both joy and grief as sacred, to see each polarity not as a threat but as a teaching. What if every experience in your life was trying to show you the one behind the two? Your heartbreak? A lesson in divine longing. Your failure? A call to humility and rebirth. Your confusion? An invitation to surrender the need for control. Each pole, each extreme, each challenge is a mirror. And when you stop labeling them as good or bad, you begin to see the golden thread that runs through them all. This is the path of synthesis, not addition, not subtraction, but alchemical fusion. It is the same process the alchemists used to turn lead into gold, not by discarding the base material but by transforming it. So too must you take your brokenness and burn it into brilliance. Take your polarity and shape it into a prism of spiritual light. And as this happens, something dissolves, the illusion of the separate self. You begin to realize you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, you are not even your beliefs. You are the space within which all polarities arise, and in that space there is no conflict, only awareness. This is not detachment, this is sacred presence. To be here, fully, without pushing or pulling. Without hiding from one side or clinging to the other. It is a rare state, a holy state, the still point in a spinning world. From here, polarity becomes dance, not war. You move with the swing, but you are not swung. You feel everything, but you are not overwhelmed. You suffer, yes, but your suffering becomes sacred because it no longer defines you. It refines you. And in that refinement, you meet yourself as you truly are, not a divided creature, but a vessel of the whole. This is the final gift of the law of polarity, not balance, but unity. Not standing between opposites as if trying to juggle them, but remembering that the opposites were never truly separate to begin with. They are language, and you are the silence beneath them. Let us close with this. There is a reason. The Kybalion begins with the principle of mentalism and ends with the principle of gender. For the path begins with the realization that all is mind, and concludes with the understanding that everything seeks union, masculine and feminine, light and dark, self and other, even thought and silence. All of them seek to return, to reconcile, to merge into the Great One. And when you truly walk the Hermetic path, not just in theory but in presence, you begin to feel it. The magnetic pull of the center, the pulse of unity behind the chaos, the call home. It is subtle, but it is real. And when you follow it, your life changes. Not because the world stops swinging, but because you have remembered the one who never moved, the one you've always been, the one who was never separate, not for a moment, not ever. The path is not from one pole to the other. The path is from fragmentation to fullness. Now that we've walked through the hidden meanings, spiritual dimensions, and cosmic echoes of the principle of polarity, the final question remains. How do we actually live this? How do we not only understand polarity but embody it, consciously, powerfully, alchemically? Because if this Hermetic law is more than an abstract concept, if it is a tool for awakening, a map of the soul and a mirror of divine order, then living by it must lead us not just to inner peace but to a radical transformation of perception and being. And that is exactly what the Hermetic masters meant when they taught that polarity is not a trap, it is a path. Choosing the center in a world of extremes, in a world that constantly tries to polarize you, to pull your attention to one side, to incite reaction, to demand allegiance to this or that. Your power lies not in picking a side, but in anchoring yourself in the center, not in neutrality as indifference, but in neutrality as presence. This is the law of neutralization in practice. When others are swept up in the drama, the anger, the binary debate, you become the calm eye in the storm. You observe, you feel. But you choose response over reaction. You become the point of stillness in a pendulum world. That stillness is not weakness. It is spiritual strength, the capacity to hold opposites without collapse, to feel pain without drowning, to feel joy without grasping, to be fully human, but anchored in something beyond duality. This is the mastery of polarity, not the escape from life's intensity, but the ability to stand within it as the conscious conductor. Reframing reality as spectrum, not absolute. Most of us were raised to think in absolutes. Success versus failure, right versus wrong, good versus bad. But polarity invites a new lens, not black or white, but gradients of truth. When you see life through polarity, you stop labeling your experiences as final. You realize that every emotion, every thought, every event is on a sliding scale. And that scale is movable. Hate can soften toward neutrality. Fear can warm into caution, then courage. Sadness can rise into reflection, then into peace. Nothing is static. This is one of the most liberating realizations a human being can have. That you can shift poles. That you are not stuck. You are not angry. You are temporarily at the lower end of passion. You are not lost. You are momentarily at the shadow of seeking. You are not broken. You are in transit between two expressions of being. The entire universe vibrates, and so do you. This is the foundation of real self-mastery, recognizing that you are a field of frequencies and you have the ability to raise, shift, and choose them, not by force but by awareness. And from that awareness comes sovereignty. Practicing presence as integration. To truly live polarity is to begin the lifelong art of integration. What does that look like in real life? When you feel conflicted, you stop trying to silence one side. You listen to both. When you experience failure, you ask, where is the hidden pole of success in this? When you judge another, you pause and reflect. What part of myself is this triggering or reflecting? Every moment becomes a portal. Instead of running from discomfort, you meet it. Instead of chasing after the high, you rest in the middle. Instead of seeing life as war, you begin to see it as dance. The inner tension between your highest self and your wounds, it becomes a sacred alchemy. The friction is no longer suffering, it is refinement. You move through your life not as a victim of poles, but as one who conducts their charge. Like a tuning fork between spirit and matter, you begin to vibrate at the frequency of wholeness. Awakening as embodiment, not escape. Many seekers fall into the trap of thinking spiritual awakening means leaving behind polarity. To ascend, to transcend, to dissolve. But true awakening is not escape. It is embodiment. It is the realization that nothing needs to be rejected in order to become whole. You don't need to eliminate the ego. You need to place it in service of the soul. You don't need to destroy desire. You need to align it with truth. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be present. Polarity is the soil in which consciousness grows. It is the contrast that teaches you choice. It is the mirror that reveals the you who is beyond all swings. And when you finally embrace it, without resistance, without fear, you become whole again. Not because the opposites disappeared, but because you are no longer caught between them. You are holding them. You are inhabiting the axis. Becoming the bridge between realms in Hermetic philosophy The human being is the bridge between heaven and earth, between above and below, between masculine and feminine, light and dark, mind and body. Polarity lives within you not as contradiction, but as capacity. You are not here to choose sides. You are here to bring them together, to embody unity in the midst of duality. This is the sacred role of the initiate, the mystic, the alchemist, to walk in both worlds, to speak the language of the two, but serve the one. In that space, you no longer fear conflict. You no longer seek to eliminate difference. You begin to love paradox, to welcome contrast, to honor the law, because you see what others cannot, that every pole is a face of the same mystery, and to live that mystery is to become alive in a way few ever do. The principle of polarity is not just a metaphysical idea. It is a lens, a practice, and a revolution of perception. Once it is embodied, nothing is ever the same. Because now you no longer live in a world of this or that. You live in a field of this and that. And in the middle, you find yourself whole, awake, free. Now, we prepare to walk forward. In the next chapter of this Hermetic journey, we will explore the principle of rhythm, the law of movement, cycles, cosmic timing, and how to step out of the unconscious swing of life. But until then, stand in the middle and know, you are not the pendulum. You are the pulse.